Today I'm going to be discussing the legacy of COVID-19 with a focus on entrepreneurs and startups. Today's agenda will look at the effects of COVID-19 on entrepreneurship and new businesses, how to mitigate and circumvent these effects, how to help small businesses and take advantage of the current economic climate, and then I'll leave some time at the end for some questions. First, when discussing COVID, we need to talk about the disease itself. Figure 1 on the left shows the corresponding hotspots of the disease, with the worst areas being Ontario, Quebec, and Alberta, while Figure 2 displays Canada's highest GDP metropolitan areas and their projected GDP by the end of next year before COVID. As you can tell, the largest economic areas in Canada are among the worst affected places. Obviously, in this new reality, the projected goals of Canada's most prosperous provinces and regions will not be met, but the important takeaway is that these large economic zones, like the Greater Toronto Area, are not equally divided by the virus. As downtown Toronto and the 6 boroughs contain almost half of all COVID cases in Ontario, cities like Hamilton and Oakville have far fewer. In these city centers, entrepreneurs and small businesses have an increased potential to thrive and become successful, which leaves the question of what can they do now. As I said before, both Montreal and Toronto account for about half of their respective provinces' total case count. While you might expect proximity to these cities to result in more cases, there are actually far fewer cases and reports of a second wave in areas like Halton, Kingston, and Boucherville. Not only are these places far less susceptible to a second wave, but they all have highly educated workforces and a population that's wealth has helped insulate them from the economic troubles of the virus. In this era of uncertainty, entrepreneurs and startups need to consider alternative bases of operations to continue to grow and help Canada's economy recover. Now that we've finished with the overview, I would like to discuss the challenges that entrepreneurs and startups face in COVID. I've divided these into 2 different categories. The first are mitigatable factors, which are issues that cannot be avoided. These include decreased cash flow, lower GDP, and higher levels of unemployment. These issues require assistance from the government or other sources to alleviate their impact, and circumventable factors, issues that can be avoided, i.e., a lack of access to markets and customers, and availability of educational resources. These tools are readily available or can be made available to circumvent the challenges of COVID-19 right now. Discussing mitigation, the issue of cash flow cannot be avoided. This isn't a tool to be used, but I thought it would be worthwhile for a discussion. Based on the principles of Milton Friedman, the CERB does not act like a salary replacement or permanent income enough for people to incentivize spending it. While this is not focused on people who are spending all their CERB on necessities like rent and food, it is my belief that there's a large amount of people who receive CERB which pays more than they made before, or who are receiving CERB despite no actual need for it. People who receive CERB understand that it is a set emergency lump sum that will expire eventually. Therefore, unlike a salary, which is assured every month, they are more likely to hoard and not spend this money. But CERB has already been enacted. Therefore, what is the solution I'm proposing? If is a return to normalcy, then a CERB created to pay people to go back to work should be prioritized. Even if we are successful at launching new businesses and helping entrepreneurs modernize, if there is no cash flow in our economy, we will be creating too many heads to feed in an already razor-thin market. Therefore, if we can help incentivize a return to normalcy with our government, we can incentivize greater spending based on the chart I displayed on the left. The work CERB would be paid to people who are fully employed by the end of the month they apply for. The first month, there's $2,000 of income from the CERB and a low incentive to spend because CERB is their only income. But in the second month, we see the salary kick in and a greater spending potential. By the 4th month, CERB is no longer needed, and the extra income it provided is more likely to be injected back into the economy. With CERB, not only will there be a lack of spending potential, but a lack of safety net when CERB suddenly stops in a few months. Even with the current government extension, the lottery hypothesis is still in effect, and the hard bounce back people have been predicting will not occur. As you can see on the chart on the left, CERB is the only income people are receiving at this time, and they have a low incentive to spend, as CERB is their only income and it is a survival wage. Therefore, even if this cash flow solution is not a tool for entrepreneurs, it's a vital piece of the puzzle which needs to be solved before the economy can bounce back. Next, we will discuss circumvention, tools, and strategies. While it's the role of the government to create a nationwide financing plan, or at least that's what people think their role is, small businesses and startups need support from private and nonprofit sector to help move this along. As you can see on the left here, the government already provides a great deal of tools for small businesses and entrepreneurs to circumvent any issues that might arise during COVID. While the issue is not really the availability of these tools, it's the transfer from supplier to the person in need. Much like Amazon, public policy firms and educational centers need to figure out effective methods of delivery to get these tools to those who need them. Circumvention tools currently available include Startup Canada, which has lots of digital engagement, for example, webinars, online training, and competitions that people can participate in. It's a great platform for those who will get out there and seek these tools. The second is COVID-19 specific funding. This is dedicated funding from the federal and provincial government, which sources financing for businesses combating COVID-19. Then third is the temporary wage subsidy, a subsidy which allows small businesses and medium-sized businesses to keep their workforce employed and survive until a return to normalcy. Some of the circumvention tools that are needed, in addition to the ones already available, are packages and tools for those who will not seek help. These include businesses who have never been through economic downturn, new business owners who lack the experience or connections to seek these resources, and new Canadians who have barriers of entry like language. Dedicated funding and financing for businesses who do not meet requirements for financing is also needed, and not more niche funding for smaller and smaller groups. A plan should be in place if there is never a return to normalcy within the foreseeable future. This part shouldn't take too much time to discuss, but an easy way to circumvent a lack of access to customers and markets is to help modernize businesses. While this is simple to say over a presentation, it's a much harder thing to implement in the real world. In the past, companies like Stats Canada have used webinars or coding competitions to get those interested in modernizing the education they need. In our time, we need better tools and contracts between small business owners and medium-sized business owners and other companies like Amazon, Shopify, Uber Eats, and Zoom in order to get them into the modern era and keep the Canadian economy running. What the long-term effects on small businesses and startups in Canada will be because of COVID. The best example I can give of what will probably occur in the next 1 to 3 years is based off my previous work on farms for Stats Canada. In 2001, the average Canadian farm had increased in acreage by about 11.2%, but the number of farms had declined by 10%. And by 2016, those numbers are even higher. The reason I am discussing farms is because they display a possible future for business in Canada after COVID. Larger corporate entities like Starbucks are taking survival actions like closing 200 locations in Canada because they can afford to sit on the sidelines while everyone else has to roll the dice and compete in a depressed economy. In this scenario, playing out across 15 years of time, we might see this type of change in the next year or two. The outcome being a transition from a less free and competitive market to a more oligopolistic market with more big players who will change how the economy is run. It's my goal and hope that work can be done to reward those who are forced to risk and not put them at the mercy of those who can choose the risk and win by not even playing. Now, if anybody has any questions, they can reach out to me at my email or in a follow-up interview to discuss this presentation. And I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to listen and watch this. And hopefully this will lead to a successful role with you and your team in the foreseeable future. Thank you.